This episode of the Out of Bounds podcast is sponsored by Fisher Skis, and you can visit them at www.fishersports.com.
A rule through the whole outdoor industry is that no one's telling you what to do, so you just make up your job every day.
Yeah.
there's like no job description or like daily task list. It's just like, okay, somehow you made it here, so I don't know, invent something for yourself of worth.
Yeah. Like, what is that? Yeah. So that's actually probably a good thing to actually talk about. What does that look like for you? How do you decide what to do with your time and what's important and like prioritizing what a season looks like? Well, we're going to like backtrack and do like a full intro, but like we're on this, like, let's just talk about this for a second.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Like just like essentially, how do I wake up every morning and decide what my job is? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I benefited a little bit in this, in that I studied economics in school. So
Okay.
I went to Colby College and I studied econ there. And so I like kind of look at it I look at my job a lot from like the brand perspective rather than from the athlete perspective a lot of the times. And I just think about like, okay, what is my job? Like, who's paying me? You know, not like what is my job as people perceive it, because that's just like go skiing every day, which is not the reality.
Right.
So I think about my job from like a brand perspective, and that's to like represent them to the point where people want to wear the things, use the equipment that I have, that I use.
Yeah.
So I like try and every day like show up in media as like a representative for a brand.
Right.
And in doing that, like I think about like in this era, just like the amount of eyeballs that anything's, like if I'm out there, how many people are seeing me? And what I like to do is show up in person. That's like why I drove down here today.
Right.
But I mean, the reality of this era is that you can have so much like greater impact if you are like showing up on like a small screen.
Yeah.
So I blend them, just because like
Yeah.
I like showing up in person and I like people meeting me, but then I also like try and show up on a tiny screen. So on any given day, I'll blend those things. Well, I'll just like go skiing hard with my skis and my kit and show up as an athlete there in person, or I'll work to like create something that people want to watch that's intriguing, inspiring, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's hard, I think, for people to imagine, especially like people listening to this, like whether they're sitting in a ski shop, on a chairlift or whatever, like this is everybody's passion, but it's hard to imagine the job side of it. Right. And I even it feels like sometimes now, especially doing this full time, that I have some free time, and I'm almost having a harder time having free time, like managing myself and making sure that I go out and actually like do the thing we were talking about, deliverables, like that I have deliverables for myself. So is that a thing that you have for you? Like, I know showing up in person and I know showing up for the brand who's paying you, but how do you keep that on a schedule? It's different when you're on a film trip or whatever, and you know what your exact purpose is, but on the day to day, like, what does that look like?
Totally. Like it's the danger of working, like having your job be also your greatest passion, right?
Yeah.
So like I am a skier, and like skiing is also the thing in my life that's brought me the greatest joy.
Right.
So how do I make sure that I maintain that space where that thing is I'm just doing it for myself, and then also knowing when, okay, I need to, stop doing this just for myself and find a way to monetize this or bring value to it. And I think most days I let it bleed into work. I'm like always looking at things from the perspective of like, how can this be useful to like myself, my brand, the companies I work for, all of that. And then, maybe once a week or twice a week, I'll have a day where I'm like, okay, today I am going to do nothing marketable, or like not have my phone out, or not do anything like really of value, and just go skiing with my friends.
Yeah.
And I'll say that to myself, like that morning, I'll be like, I'm just going skiing today.
Yeah.
And that's like really important. And then like, of course, the moment will come during that day when I'm like, man, this is a killer clip. Like we're skiing POW. I'm rolling with a crew. This is so cool. And I'll be like, no, You've told yourself this morning that this is for you,
Yeah.
and you have to hold that line. And it's difficult. It's difficult to not always be working, because if you look around or if you're on your phone, it would appear that everyone else is always working, and that's what it would take
Yeah.
in order to make it. But that's not sustainable for me. So I have to have that like division where I'm working, 5 days a week and spending 2 days a week, just like skiing for my own passion or doing whatever I want, but it's just for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's got to be hard to, it's got to be difficult to manage. I know you said that, but I look at it from the outside looking in, and I don't know how anybody manages to split those things up, especially with the social component, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where everybody's always doing something, and there's like that risk. I talked to Bjarne about it a couple of weeks ago, and what he was saying kind of is like, for a while he was just scared to be away from his phone because he was afraid he was going to miss something.
Oh my God, yes.
It's crazy.
Yeah. And then you go on there and you're like, what did I, or like, I think when you're like scrolling, it feels like you're fulfilling this like thing. You're like catching up. But then if you were to like put your phone down and be like, okay, write in 2 sentences, truly what you've learned. And it's like, nothing. You didn't learn anything. Like, it's not, it's, we know what our style is and the stories we want to tell, and it has nothing to do with what other people are doing.
Yeah.
It's like if you're really doing something worthy of people's attention, it's not because you're not being influenced by somebody else's 15-second clip. You're doing it because you like have a deep-seated desire to do it and then tell that story. It's its own separate thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it stresses me out a lot often, and I tried. He recommended to me, like, he's like, dude, 2 days a week, like on the weekend, like basically Friday night till Sunday night, I don't touch my phone. I basically have it so all socials off, all emails off. I don't answer anybody. Like text message, okay, but that's about the only thing that you can get me for during that time frame. And that's how he was like, look, that's how I need to separate my time. I realize that, because otherwise it's just you're just in that cycle.
Totally. I mean, I think we're kind of all living through this period now where we're having to approach our phone and social like diet culture. It's like as people are like now learning these things, or like some sort of restrictive thing like a drug where people are like, I had a problem, or I'm like developing a problem, and now how do I build rules around this thing where I can like now continue to function without it like taking away from my life.
Yeah.
It's amazing. And it's like, if abstinence isn't an option for you because like social media is part of your work, then how do you balance these things? Because you still have to go on, some amount of time.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think a 2 day, like a weekend, creating a weekend where you don't go on social media, that's a great way to balance it. That's a great way to balance it.
It's great. It doesn't seem sustainable for me, at least. Like it seems too difficult, but I don't know. Dude, he's as popular as an athlete and as a photographer as it gets right now, and like he seems to be doing fine with it. So like maybe it's just my own fear of like falling behind, I think, and that's the thing that I chase all the time.
Totally. Yeah, like there's going to be but there's you never miss anything. You never miss anything. And here's like the greatest part about it all is that like society is still functioning. Like we're still able to communicate with each other through like old school avenues, as in like conversation.
Yeah.
So if anything really does happen that is worth your time and attention on social media, your friends will tell you about it.
Yeah. Like, and you'll see it whenever you're back on. Like it'll still be relevant a few days later. And everything cycles so quickly now that it almost doesn't fucking matter. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, if you miss something, does it actually matter? Like
and that almost grants you freedom. And I mean, this is separate and doesn't help with the whole thing, but like that almost gives me a little bit of freedom in posting, when I used to have all this like anxiety about posting. And is this the exact thing? And is this my voice? And is this the story I want to tell? And then I'm like, wow, you know what? Nobody cares, actually, because this is going to cycle out so fast. And it's this balance of wanting to have integrity in everything I say, and also like posting as much as is required as an athlete these days. And like you can't like make everything perfect with your brand and continue to post 4 days a week. You need to be able to like be fluid and know that people will forgive you for inconsistencies.
Yeah.
It's like it's the whole thing is like,
I don't envy you. I don't envy, like, honestly, I think everybody thinks that it's it's all great, and I'm sure you've heard this a million times where people, they think like the pro skier life is the best thing ever, and it's what everybody wants to do, but it's just, it seems like a lot, man. Like, it seems like a lot.
Well, I think the only fallacy would be to think that it's not a job.
Yeah.
It 100% is.
Yeah.
And once you accept that, it becomes a whole lot easier because you're no longer living under this idea that it's like, that it's just, fun all the time. Because it's all about expectation. And if you have the expectation that you're just going to go out and go skiing POW, just like ski POW and jump out of helicopters and then go to shows and sign signatures, you'll be disappointed. You'll be disappointed all the time because it's a lot of other things. But I like it a lot because once I understood what it was, then I could, once you understand that it is work and it's a job and you're creating something, then you can find all the other beauty in it. Like you're a craftsman of like maybe something inspiring, or you're a storyteller, or you can focus on the teamwork aspect of it. Like nobody's like doing this stuff alone, like no one. And there's so many ways to like really enjoy the profession, but just like being rad and messing around and just going skiing all the time are not realities. So like, I think it is actually a really wonderful job, but not for the reasons people think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I agree with you. And all right, before we get too far,
yeah,
Jim Ryan, tell people who you are, a little bit about yourself, and then we'll continue where we just were. So.
Yeah, we kind of really jumped into it there. I'm Jim Ryan. I'm a professional skier based out of Jackson Hole, Wyoming. I'm originally from Rutland, Vermont.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's why I'm here in West Springfield. I'm back for the Killington World Cup, and I just got done with the Teton Gravity Research Tour.
Yeah.
Which ended in, for me, it ended in Boston, Mass.
Yeah.
And then I went up to see my parents in Rutland, and now I'm here.
Roll right into the World Cup and then fly tomorrow, and then this is like, dude, it's a cycle. That part is like that, exactly what you just said is the part that I think people don't understand, right? It's like how much go is involved with it too. And as much as, like we talked about it before we got on the mics, it's like, it's great and you feel fulfilled and it's really important, and to be grateful for that stuff is awesome, but it's a lot of work, man. Like it's you're going all the time. Like I'd be burnt out as shit already, and you're like still here smiling. I don't know how you're doing it.
Yeah. I haven't been home in 5 weeks. Yeah. But I don't know. I like it. I mean, and that's why I'm
You're
here.
enjoying it. Yeah.
I really do love it, and I'm learning to love it more the more I do it.
Okay.
And I think that's just because I'm getting better at it. Anytime you have a job, the first week, month, year is super painful because you're spending all your excess, there's the job, and then all the other energy is just learning and getting your butt kicked.
Yeah.
And that for me took actual years. And I'm just now, 5 years being a pro skier, just now being able to settle into the role and have time in between the events and the shoots to like focus on what I want to do next and growth, and then a little bit of relaxation. But not so much.
What did the progression of your career kind of look like, right? You talk about kind of growing into it and figuring that stuff out, but I think the thing that everybody's so scared of with being a professional skier is figuring out a way to pay their bills, right?
Totally.
And like figuring out how to actually make ends meet and figure out how to do the profession part of it. So what did it look like in the beginning, and how did it progress forward?
Totally. I mean, the beginning is that I've been skiing since I was 2 and grew up ski racing. So that was like my foundation.
Yep.
And then once ski racing ended, I pursued this path with everything I had, but you're right, it doesn't pay the bills, not even close. And in the beginning, like, I don't know anybody who really was able to, in their first year of being like, I want to be a professional skier, have it pay for anything.
Yeah.
So I think my story is like a lot of other stories in that I was working several other jobs and then working on the content thing, like with all the free time I had.
Mm-hmm.
What I did. So I've worked a million jobs in both the off seasons and in the winter. I was a ski coach for a lot of it, and in Jackson Hole, there's the ski club is on Snoking, so it was at night.
Yeah.
So I would ski all day at Jackson Hole, and then from like, you know, what was it, like 4 to 7 at night, I would coach racing at the local hill. And so that like worked out really well. So I'd just be like in my ski boots all day. But it was great. It was great.
No, that's
like
a ton of time on hill.
I never had to like transition my brain to like being a bartender where I like took myself out. I was like completely focused on skiing. Although I did do the bartending thing, a couple different restaurants. I worked in, you know, retail shops.
Yeah.
In the summers, I did like all sorts of work everywhere, from like raft guiding to a bit of work in California, that I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with. And just like, yeah, I just made it ends meet and then spent all of my like extra time and resources on trying to create this thing. And I think the biggest difference between kind of my path and a lot of my peers was that I just like said out loud what I wanted to do. Like there's so many people that move to these ski towns and they're like creating content and they want to be seen, and who, you know, they, you know, maybe they want to be in the films, maybe they don't, but you don't know. And I like, from the moment I moved to Jackson, before I had a single clip worth watching, was like, I would like to be a pro skier. Not I would like to, I was like, I'm here to be a pro skier.
Yeah.
And I want to ski for Warren Miller and I want to ski for Teton Gravity Research. That's what I want to do. That's why I moved here. And this is what I'm doing. And especially those like first couple of years before I had any sort of like claim, I had a lot of people just like call me an idiot straight up.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're like, you're
right.
It's like,
it's hard to envision it. If you don't feel it, it's hard for anybody else to feel it, envision it, see it. Like it's a weird job to be like, this is what I want to do.
This is what I want to do. People are like, you'll never make it.
Yeah.
So I get it's like burned into the back of my brain, and it still fires me up. But like, I'd be in like downtown in the Cowboy Bar, and this dude coming up to me and being like, "You're never gonna make it. I've seen 1,000 of you before, and you are no different." And me going home and being like,
fuck that guy.
Fuck that guy, man. Like he doesn't know me. I mean, it like still fires me up.
That stuff gets you going. Still
gets me going.
That's sick.
Yeah,
I love that. That like spite thing. I think people are like afraid to be a little fueled by like the spite and like the like I'm gonna prove you wrong type shit. And I actually think it's really important in this industry because everybody is so like no about everything. It feels like sometimes. So like being able to do that stuff and kind of look back and be like, fuck you. Like I did it. It's here. Like I'm doing it. I'm happy. Like this is because you're not doing it for them and you're not doing it because they said you couldn't. But like it still feels good to just be like, this is where I'm at.
Yeah, totally. And it's one of a million motivators because
for sure. Yeah.
Like I couldn't just focus on that one comment that wouldn't get me out of bed in the morning. It's like it's the love of the sport and it's all the people that said like you got this also.
Right.
And it's people believing in me. Like the very first person that signed me, Sarah Lauritsen, like I put in work for her too because like, you know, whatever, 6 years ago she signed me and I'm not going to let her go down because 6 years ago, you know, like she said, you belong here. And it's like, holy crap. It's like, that's another motivator. People believing in you. It's just as powerful, if not more.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Was there times when you were like, this is not going to work? I mean, obviously there's that moment when you're like that, but was there like a grind season when you can remember that you were like, I'm going to quit?
The closest I got was the year of like preceding my first ever call from Warren Miller.
Okay.
I was having a hard time and I'd put years into it at this point and I was just like dead broke.
Yeah.
And yeah, I was having these thoughts of like, I've made a huge mistake.
Yeah.
But I hadn't said them out loud. And then that March, I got a call. Warren Miller, do you want to go to Alaska? And it was like, yeah.
What did that feel like? And what is it like when you get that call? Like, what are the next steps?
I mean, I didn't tell, after I got that call, I like screamed in the street, right? but then I didn't tell anybody until like 2 days before I got on the plane because I couldn't believe it was real.
Yeah. Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah. It was like a total secret because this industry, you know, it's like,
Yeah.
it's tough. It's tough. And I couldn't believe that this was actually happening for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't going to talk about it or tell anyone because there's so many promises, right? People make promises.
Dude, this is an industry full of bailers, dude. Like
Right.
broken promises is like what this whole thing is built on.
Totally. And I didn't want to be a fool, right? So I was like, all right, I'm not going to talk about it till the moment I'm on the plane. And then even then I couldn't believe it. And I didn't even like promote my role in the film till I saw it in the theater. Like,
Yeah.
it took so long for it to become real for me.
Why that, like, it's maybe it's anxiety, but like why do you feel that way? Why did you feel like you couldn't promote it? I mean, because to me, once you film it and you do that part,
Yeah, but I had never seen that, right?
right, I guess that's true.
No, I had never, like, I didn't know how it worked. Like, I went up there, I skied, they had the cameras, but like,
Right.
I'm not believing anything at that point until I see it on the screen. And even then it was so hard for me. Like, it was so hard
No
for me.
shit.
Yeah, totally. And that's what I'm talking about now, like 5 years into this thing of like,
Yeah.
I've been in 7 feature films. Like, that now is when I can like get up on stage and be like, I belong here.
Yeah.
And this is real. And that I made that. And that is my craft.
Yeah.
But it's taken that long.
That's I don't know. I guess my question is still just why? Why does it take that long for you to feel comfortable in what you're doing? And it again, in this particular instance, I think it has nothing to do with the money aspect of it, right? Because like I end up talking about the money part of being a professional skier and being in this industry in general quite a bit. But I don't think that part that you're talking about right now has anything really to do with that. I don't know. Like, at what point do you feel a sense of belonging, and how do you get that feeling?
Yeah, I mean, it's got to come from within. That's the whole thing, right?
Yeah.
Like because you're never gonna get a stamp of approval. You're never gonna graduate. You know, it's like you're never gonna get like your license or like graduate from the bar or like
Right,
get to
right,
put
right.
MD at the end of your name. It's like
Right.
Jim Ryan Pro Skier. When do I get to say that?
I feel like Warren Miller is kind of that stamp. TGR is kind of that stamp, dude. Like that should be enough. No.
No, I agree. But like, I wasn't gonna say it before it was real.
Okay.
You know, like that was important to me, and I agree, and like, heck, you can. It doesn't matter. Say it whenever you feel it. That's the thing. Like, say it
Right.
whenever you feel it. But yeah, it took me a long time, longer than it should have.
Yeah, but like everybody's got their own stuff and everybody's got their own journey to it, and
Yeah.
I think you end up where you end up, and obviously this has worked out for you to this point. So
Yeah.
there's nothing that we can go back on and be like, oh, we should have done it this way. Like you're doing great. Like again, like I think just being in the type of films that you're in right now speaks volumes by itself. Like you don't need to say anything. Like Jim Ryan Pro Skier, I'm in Warren Miller TGR, period. Right? Like everybody you talk to, because that's always a tough thing, right? You hear people say, "Oh, I'm a pro skier. Oh, I'm a pro skier. I'm a pro skier" all the time now,
Mm-hmm.
which I don't have a problem with, and I don't really know why anybody would have a problem with. But I talked to Chris Davenport a few years ago, and he was like, "Look, you're not a pro skier until you can pay your bills off of skiing," right? And it was a weird line for me to draw, and I don't know if it makes sense. But I don't know how you draw the line any other way.
I just don't think there should be a line. I
You
don't.
are what you feel like. Is that
It
what?
just like, yeah, I don't, and that's the thing. Like, I think the label doesn't really matter that much, and that's like kind of what you're saying there. Like, it's like maybe stop labeling yourself as a pro skier or not. Just like you're a skier.
Yeah.
I'm a skier, and then here are the films I've been in. Here's what I made.
Yeah.
That's it. That's it for me. It has nothing to do with the money. It has nothing to do with anything. I'm a skier, and this is what I've done. Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Because you're right. I have no problem with people saying they're a pro skier. I have zero problem with that. Yeah.
Mm. I think some people are just uncomfortable with the fact that, they did all this work, they got to this point, they worked really hard, whatever, and then someone just gets to claim it.
Yeah.
Which is, I don't know, I kind of go back and forth a little bit on it because I think there has to be something, right? Like there has to be some credits to that. You know what I mean? Like you can't just go out there and say it. And I think now with social, you can just go out there and say it.
Mm-hmm.
and that makes it difficult too. So like, again, I don't think there needs to be a hard line, but there's got to be some accountability for a job. I can't go and say that I'm a lawyer. You know what I mean? Like,
right. And
that's where it's a little tough.
Yeah.
And I'm not like, again, I think there's a certain aspect of it that's very much like gatekeeping, right? Like, and it's like being shitty in general, you know, where you're just like, fuck you, you're not a pro skier, I'm better than you. You know, it's
right,
like that
right.
classic, which is stupid.
It's just not going to help anything.
Right.
Yeah.
It doesn't make anything better. It makes nobody feel good. And then they remember you as the piece of shit that said that like 10 years from now when they actually are a pro skier. You know what I mean?
Right, exactly.
Like, you never want to be that person.
Right.
But there's also like, like we said, it's an industry of broken promises. It's an industry of people just saying whatever they feel like. And it's so much of what happened on the mountain stays on the mountain a lot of times. And people just exist in their own bubbles. And that kind of stuff does, again, like it's a job, right? You get paid. This is your actual career. I don't blame anybody for feeling some type of way, you know, when they're uncomfortable with the fact that someone's doing it. But I also think it takes a level of discipline and empathy to just be like, look, I don't care what you call yourself. It's fine. Like, we're all good.
Totally.
It doesn't affect me at all.
Totally.
So,
Yeah.
It's a little weird, but let me ask you, I'm sure people have asked you about this a million times, but growing up in New England, how did that affect your ability to become a pro skier, your skiing in general? People always talk about like people from New England are better skiers because they ski in shit conditions and blah, blah, blah. Like people do this all the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's necessarily true, but I think you get used to skiing in shittier conditions more often, and that part of it's probably true. So what was that like for you? What was the transition from being in New England, being a New England born skier, to going to a place like Jackson and skiing that kind of terrain?
Totally. Yeah, I mean, okay, so I grew up ski racing in Vermont. And so I developed like what it takes to be a New England ski racer, like strong outside ski, knew how to, tune my skis really well and get to the front of the boot, all that. And then I brought that kind of to the Western mountains. And I think just because there are so few like East Coast skiers that have kind of attempted the big mountain, path, it has allowed me to really have a style that is unique, and I've been able to like showcase that, and it's really cool. Like my whole segment for TGR this past year was filmed during the 5-week drought. So it's huge drought in the West last winter. And basically everybody had written off filming during it, of just like, man, we can't help this. The weather is what it is, and just kind of a pause on content creation, ski movie, everything. We're gonna hold off until it snows, and then we're gonna keep going. And I was like, I think I can do something with this. And I came to TGR with this idea of it's midwinter conditions, granted very thin snowpack, but it's stable high in the Tetons, and I think I have a unique skill set here where I can build a segment even though it hasn't snowed in 4 or 5 weeks.
Yeah.
And I built my whole segment for TGR during that drought, whole thing.
Yeah.
And so like my background as a New England ski racer really kind of has allowed me to move into a space in like mountaineering now that I wouldn't have otherwise. And then even beyond that, I shouldn't say beyond that, like tangential, I have made a whole name for myself in ski movies and content as like the guy who can carve, the guy who can carve, like
true.
period,
Yeah,
just like
true.
that. Like I filmed the Warren Miller segment at Sun Valley, one at Killington, and then last year I made one in Davos, Switzerland, all of them on hardpack. All of these segments on full hardpack, like shiny ice conditions.
Yeah.
And it was awesome, and it continues to be awesome, and it's so cool because it's like this skill that I felt like was a non-negotiable growing up here, just like knowing how to bend a ski and stand on hardpack snow.
Yeah.
And it is like allowed me to be unique and interesting to like a huge audience. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's very relatable.
Yeah.
Like it's funny. It's relatable, but it's not. Like not many people are going out and doing it at that level.
Mm-hmm.
but people see it. It's funny. This like turning thing is like having a renaissance right now where everybody is into watching people just make pretty like beautiful turns. And usually when you think about a pro athlete doing something, like you have these images ingrained in your head, like of what they do. And for me, it's you just turning. Like it's when I think of it, it's you just like fully trenched in a turn. Like if somebody was asking me what Jim Ryan looks like when he skis, that's what's there. So it's just interesting to me to see how much people give a shit about just something that is as simple and as basic, but as high level as making a good turn.
Totally. Yeah. It's like, I don't know. It's like the whole concept of sushi, right? Like people like want to add like endless stuff on top of their sushi, but sushi, all it really is like really good rice.
Yeah.
You know?
Totally.
Yeah. And so it's the same thing. It's like, it's the foundation for everything we're doing out there is the turn. And so to be able to like do that with a style and precision and skill that is like as high level as you think you can get, or like as I can get, yeah, it's cool. People really respond to it.
Yeah. What was it like for you being back this weekend for the World Cup? Like, do you still enjoy watching ski racing, I assume?
Oh my God, yes. I mean, yeah, I have no desire to go back to ski racing, but I mean, watching that is really cool. I mean, anytime you watch somebody exercising extreme skill, no matter what it is just the best. It's so fun to watch. And with ski racing in particular, I can relate a little bit. Like I know how difficult it is, what those women are doing and how fast they're going and what it takes. Yeah. So it's a really killer event. And and it's like, it's in my hometown.
Yeah. Right.
So many of my friends, you know, are still there. It's really cool.
Yeah. It's crazy the energy that the people around this area bring to that event. Like even just watching it on video, you're like, holy fucking shit. There's so many people that are just excited to watch people go ski terrible conditions right now.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, but it's cool. And I mean, in terms of conditions for ski racing, it's pretty good. I mean, it's
right.
It's firm and it's steep, and so it's kind of a great venue.
It is. It works out really well, and I was honestly shocked that they even were able to put it together because like 2 weeks ago it was like bare. There was nothing.
Every year it's like,
nothing.
Is it going to happen?
Yeah.
Is it going to happen? And then like the week before it gets cold enough, their snowmaking's so dialed and they just make it happen.
So stressful. I can't even imagine the people that are putting that event on.
I would not want to be in their shoes.
No, thank you. What is it like for you watching ski racing these days in general? Because I think, again, I go back and forth on this, whether ski racing is still super relevant. I think it's extremely important. Like, don't get me wrong, but I think the way that people are consuming ski racing content is very different than it used to be. And I feel like less young people are doing it. You know what I mean? Like at least from when I was a kid, it feels like everybody was ski racing. It feels like everybody like had a ski racing program in their school. Like, for example, like local high school here, there used to be a local, like the high school had a team. The high school in the next town had a team. Like everybody had a team. None of those programs even exist anymore in these areas. Never mind the racing side of it. The ski clubs don't even exist anymore. So I guess from your perspective, where is ski racing at health wise? I know it's hard to just take a general gauge on something like that, but you ski for a company that ski racing matters to very much, you know, and a lot of these companies, like for Fisher, it matters very much too. It's important for the business, but I always wonder, is it healthy? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Wow. I don't know. I don't know. Cause I feel like even during my, you know, short career as a ski racer, I saw like the ebbs and flows of like, you know, Eastern Cups being packed and you can't even get in them to like, where is everybody? And then back again, you know, like when Michaela hit the scene and watching the surge that came in with her of like young women ski racers, like that was amazing. And so where it stands right now, I don't know. Yeah. And I'm sure it'll go through like a lot more, you know, ups and downs before whatever. I don't know.
It's a hard one, and I don't have a good answer. Like I've talked to a million people with a million different opinions on this topic, and I guess for me, I'm watching it in two ways, I guess, like at the local level and at the retail level. And I can tell you, like at the retail level, everybody's sick of it. Like there's like a few shops that do it really well and they love it and that's what they want to do and they kind of corner their little market. But everybody else is just kind of like, it's fucking hard to deal with race. Like it's expensive. It's expensive for the end consumer. It's annoying because there's constantly stuff going on with it. Like you have to constantly be servicing that equipment and you have to have the right stuff at the right time for the right person. And like ski race dads are notoriously like picky and they need to be on their shit and they need everything to be like that's just part of it, you know. It's not a bad thing, but it's just it makes it another step harder, I think, for people to kind of get into the ski racing side of things because less places are now supporting it, right? So it just feels like this slippery slope of but on the other side, it's like you mentioned the Michaela thing and she's crushing it. Like she's the greatest of all time and she's very much making it relevant for like girls, boys, whatever, to go out there and ski race. Like it seems like people actually want to and they give a shit about it when she's on the hill, myself included. Like I don't really give a shit that much in general about ski racing, but when Michaela's on, I watch. You know, so there's ebbs and flows, I guess.
Yeah I don't know where the future's like where that sport is headed. I hope it stays healthy just because, you know, I saw all the benefit in it and to have like some structure, especially for like at some point for kids, you know, just because, I mean, I've reached a point in my career where it's like, I like to experiment in all these different realms and be free form and exercise creativity. But that's because I have this foundation where I, you know, learned these things. And that's because it was set up within a ski club and then a mountain school. And I had coaches and they taught me all these tools. And we were working within a circuit, you know, where we were competing against all these other people. And it was like, it provided a lot of structure for me to like get better at skiing, have friendships, have coaches that were also mentors and travel. It provided all of those things. And it's really hard, I think, for families to do those things or get that benefit just on their own.
Yeah.
And it might seem like ski racing is a lot of, it's a headache up front with the gear and all that stuff. But in the end, I would imagine to get the same level of experience, it would probably cost just as much if you were to try to do it on your own as a family.
Yeah. It's a good point.
Yeah.
And honestly, like there's no doubt that if someone has a ski racing background, like their core and their base of their ability to go skiing is probably better than any other discipline. Like if you start park skiing, and I'm not like picking on one versus the other, but it's like you look at somebody who ski raced and you know they ski raced and because they're a strong, confident skier. You know what I mean? Like it comes with the territory to a certain extent, right? Because you get those reps, you get to be out there and you somebody explains to you like, this is how you do it. And you go through the training and it builds you up in a way that I think just going out and skiing doesn't always do.
Totally. Yeah. So, I mean, I couldn't agree more.
You treat it like a sport. I guess it's different in that respect, right? Because I think it also gives people a focus, you know, and I think that's probably an important part of it too. Like it gives you a target to shoot at. One of the hardest things about skiing is like you just go skiing. Yeah. So
yeah, totally. And that's the best part is that it skiing is anything you want it to be. And so when you were a kid, having somebody kind of create some rules, guidelines, and a goal helped me, you know, and my young mind, because I don't think without somebody kind of creating a goal within this of like showing me the point, I would have stayed in it as long because I wanted something to aim at. Yeah, exactly.
Kind of switching gears a little bit here. What does it look like? You get that call from Warren Miller, you get that call from TGR. How does all that work? Like that's, I guess, the most simple way that I can ask that question. How does the whole system work? How do you actually get into the movie and get into the film and make sure it all works and get your sponsors to be on board? Like that's a process that I think people don't realize exists either. I think they think you just get the call, you get on a plane and it's done.
Yeah. You have to start with the sponsors always.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's exceptions to all
For
of
sure.
these.
Yeah.
But the general principle is that the ski movies are sponsor driven, right? And you can look at that as like this awful thing, or you can realize that that's how the industry works, and it's totally fine.
Totally.
Yeah, it's actually great.
Yeah. I agree. I think it's great.
Yeah. So for me, like for my first call for Warren Miller, I got tapped by Warren Miller because I had just been signed to the Vocal Pro team.
Yep.
So they're like, okay, Vocal is a sponsor. We want, an athlete that's new, that can handle Alaska. How about this new guy, Jim Ryan?
Yep.
And that was a conversation that I wasn't even a part of between, Vocal and Warren Miller.
So you had no idea, like this conversation happened behind
Separately.
closed doors. Okay.
Yeah. And then they decide, and then you get the call.
Yep.
Yeah. And then you show up, and with Warren Miller in particular, they have a storyline, they have a location. You're an athlete, one of two, one of three, and you have a very specific role. And they, you can like have your creativity flex within that, but they have an idea for the segment and the story that they're going to tell, and you're a character within it.
And it's a bizarre way, like looking at it from the outside. I think people are so used to seeing like that finished product at the end, and it's like polished, and I think people don't really have an ability to grasp what the process looks like too, because I think it's always, when you look at the finished product, you don't realize that everything before that happened to make this finished product was not guaranteed.
Oh.
Like you ending up, like you being able to ski the line, like you being able to get something worth being in the film, like you actually putting it all together, them deciding to use your shit. Like there's so many more steps that happen before this actually comes out.
Totally. Whenever I talk about this, everybody's always like, wow, it would be so cool to see a behind the scenes of like what it takes to go into a ski movie. And I'm like, yeah, but it would also be so expensive. You'd have to follow someone around, and then nothing's guaranteed. And that's the whole point, is that nothing's guaranteed, and that every shot that you see in a ski movie, for every 1 second, it's like hours and hours and hours of work on top of what was probably a lifetime devotion to that sport for that person. Mm-hmm. And it's just incredible, like what I like to talk about is the teamwork aspect, because you're only seeing the athlete. You're just seeing me. Right?
Super segmented too, by the way. Like it is your segment. This is where you are. This is just you.
Yeah. And it's just me.
Right.
But what you don't see is, the two cinematographers, or the, two cinematographers, drone flyer, the producer, the guide who's running safety, all these other people, all working in conjunction up in Alaska, sitting in a cannery for 3 weeks, trying to make this one line come together. It's an incredible team effort. And that's just the front end. And then it goes to, the whole editing bay, which is just months and months and months of people sitting down saying, okay, now we have this. How do we turn this into a story within the greater context of a film? It's just like a huge effort to make these ski films every year. And then you just see this finished product, which just looks like, here's a bunch of people going skiing, and we just happen to capture it. It's like, it's crazy. And that's like the greatest trick, right?
Yeah.
It's this like wonderful illusion that we create, that we just so happen to be out there living our lives, and here it is for you to consume. But like the amount of work that goes into every segment is huge. And I think that it's actually better understanding that, because it adds so much more context. It's like, it's like watching a really good chef maybe, or something. I don't know. Like, it's really wonderful knowing. So, because now when I watch a ski movie, I'm looking for all these little things, and I'm seeing a line, and I'm looking not just for the line they're skiing, but I'm looking for like the boot back up on the horizon, or something like that. And because I know that they had to climb this thing, and if it's in Alaska, I know that they didn't just show up and ski this. They were probably there for 3 weeks before they got that line. And somebody had scouted it, years before, and had been holding it in their mind's eye, knowing they would return. Like, all of these things have to line up.
With ski movies in general, do you think there's more of a place for that behind the scenes stuff? And yes, like it would cost a lot, but there's a lot of storytelling that's starting to happen, whether it's through people's individual channels, or Like I always use Nikolai Shermer as a great example because like the way that that dude tells the story of the stuff that he's doing, I think, and obviously it's on an individual basis, but it's like high level produced stuff that he's able to go through and tell a story for. And I'm not saying that there's no story in this other stuff because there certainly is, but that like background almost makes you feel more connected to the athlete and more connected to the whole adventure of it. Is there more of a place like that for that? And is it available? And why doesn't it happen more, I guess, you know?
Yeah, I would say if anyone has shown us that there's more of a place for storytelling, it's the climbing community.
For sure.
Like what they've done with, Free Solo, and I mean, Don Wall was an incredible film.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. But if you had just done a 7-minute highlight reel of Tommy Caldwell just climbing that, right, it's like it would be totally lost. But they put it in the context of his life, and it was unbelievable.
Yeah.
So yes, I think there's definitely a place for storytelling. I think the industry has to figure out whose story it wants to tell. And yeah, it's like it's also this dichotomy of in climbing specifically, these superstars getting their whole life told, and then the rest kind of just being just these little clips, right? And you don't see anything. And then like the superstars. So I think the industry kind of has to decide whose story it wants to tell, because the resources that go into telling something like the deep dive of a story,
right,
are huge, are just really big.
Well, and you can't like nobody's gonna, if we go the other side and we tell everybody's story like A through Z, nobody's gonna fucking watch it.
Exactly, that's the thing. So they have to decide who's worthy of it, and then put the resources behind it, and then hope it has the success of Free Solo.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, good luck for sure, but it feels like everybody kind of has their own vein right now. For the most part, it's like Warren Miller. You know who that audience is, and like people go and they see a Warren Miller movie every single year, and they probably have since however long, like forever.
Totally.
There's those people that show up at those premieres, even in like Hartford. Like it's crazy. People show up and they've been gone for 30 years, or longer, and it's such a bizarre experience, and that's why Warren Miller is like, it's iconic. It's there. It's always going to be there. It is like, it's a staple of the industry, but it's very different than an MSP or a TGR or any of these other production companies, or a YouTube film that comes out that's like a 20-minute long film on somebody. There's so much content out there, and I kind of wonder how people are going to separate it more and more going forward. You know what I mean? Like it's interesting, and I think TGR sometimes gets stuck in this area where their production level is so high and everything is like so high quality and everything is so big and so ridiculous that people are psyched to watch it. Like, I mean, you saw Boston. Like, obviously people lose their shit to watch this stuff, but the longevity of it, I don't know if it's the same as an individual story being told. But how do you tell that individual story and then put it out on a big scale? It's like, it's this really difficult equation to kind of figure out. And I'm not the person to figure it out.
Yeah, I mean, TGR has done this thing recently where they have their annual ski film, but then they've also been branching out in different forms, right? With their, like, they did the HBO Edge of the Earth thing.
Totally, and it was incredible.
Yeah, and they did the Andy Irons thing.
Yep.
And so they have definitely been working into these other modes, and I think that is, I think it's genius, to be honest.
For sure.
Yeah. Because you're right, like, with the annual ski movie, yeah, it's almost like it's aimed for like an age and a demographic that people kind of like cycle in and cycle out of.
Right.
And that's because, yeah, it's specifically for people who are like, want to watch like the furthest edge of what's capable in action.
Right.
Ski action.
Right.
Yeah. And that is for a specific audience that is like the Holy Bible. And it's incredible. But I don't think it might not hold somebody for like 30 years, right?
Yeah.
But for like a 25-year-old, for me specifically at 25, it was like the greatest thing I could ever spend my time doing was watching those films.
Yeah.
So yeah. But then as that person wants something else, they're like working to provide that with the long form storytelling and expedition stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting because you watch TGR and like you're at House of Blues or whatever, and everybody's standing. And I think
Yeah.
that's a good indication of like the excitement and the type of film that you're about to watch too. Is like everybody's on their feet for the whole time and they do not give a shit. Everybody is so excited to be there. Everybody's so happy to be there, and they're like, everything that happens, they're fully invested in it, which is a great thing. I started to get a little depressed is the wrong word, but a little weirded out by like the whole annual ski movie thing when Level 1 stopped doing them. And like that was like a sign that okay, there it's not as healthy, like the whole scene maybe isn't as healthy as we think it is from the outside, and it's not maybe not sustainable to just keep doing an annual ski film every year. But there's also the other argument, like maybe there's just too many, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely mourned the loss of Level 1.
Yeah,
Big
for sure.
time. Like really big time. I think I mourned it as a fan a little bit because like Level 1 was creating something that, you know, like I ski, like I turn, I ski hardback, and then I like climb things, like ski mountaineering, and that wasn't their brand. And so I got to like just be a fan of what they put out every year and watch a style of skiing that I wasn't trying to be in. I got to just be like, let these people be my heroes.
Yeah.
And yeah, when that went away, I was really bummed about it because they brought so much to the sport in terms of just like changing it up and being different. And it was really cool. It was really cool. Yeah. And you're right. It was the first indicator that maybe this isn't like, as economically viable long-term but then it's like, yeah, I don't know.
It's tough. It's tough. Like I go back and forth with it all the time.
Yeah, I also don't know any of the details of why that stopped. I don't know anything about it. But it was the first time that I think people questioned it ever.
For sure.
Yeah.
I mean, part of it for sure is Berman just got burnt out with it.
Right.
Like,
So
that's
it's like
definitely part of it.
That's a personal thing that has nothing to do with the economics or like the sustainability. It's just like one person being like, I who am like personally carrying a company would like to do something else, please. Like then, and that has, you know, that's like, it's not
fine, valid, 100%.
Totally.
Like, can't argue with that.
Totally. Yeah.
Can't argue with that. And it was weird. It was a wake up call for people. I think not because of that part of it though, because it was this machine. Like you watch like Level 1 content was like, it was an institution for people for a long time, especially people like our age. You know what I mean? Like that's like you would just watch that shit. It was just out and it was just like mind-blowing shit after mind-blowing shit, like every single season. So then it stops and you're like, man, like this is different. Like this is a weird, like I remember just being like, this is a weird feeling, like to just know that it's like done. But then they still put stuff out, and I'm just, like, that part is a little.
It was like a soft breakup.
Yeah, it was literally like a soft breakup. It's like, yeah, we can still like be friends, but like and that's kind of where it ended up because like now they're putting out still great shit. It's just not as long, and they're not calling it an annual film.
Yeah.
So they just did fucking 3 parts in a row of Parker White. Like it's just.
Yeah, I know. But like it just like a soft breakup. Nobody's like complaining because they're like, I'll take what I can get.
Yeah, exactly. It's all fine. And they can still have movie premieres. Like they still,
Totally.
I went. I'm just like, that place was fucking slammed and everybody was hyped to be there. There was like a 45-minute wait to get into the fucking building.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe it's perfectly healthy. And Berman just felt like I need a break.
Yeah, which is fine.
Again, 100%. I don't blame him. I want to break every day. Like, you know what I mean? Like, dude, I'm like, every day I'm tired. I can't imagine what that dude feels. So,
yeah.
It's really interesting. How do you feel about the YouTube content? Like in the stuff that comes out that's like highly produced and it's specifically made for small, medium screen as opposed to being put on the big screen?
I think it's awesome.
You're a fan of it.
I'm a total fan.
Okay.
Yeah. I like it. I mean, I think that people should be able to take it into their own hands or like with a small team and create things. And then the public gets to decide if it's worthy, right? You know, it's great. I think it's really great. I think it's, you know, social media did that with the most extreme form of now everyone has a platform and we saw like what that does. I think that YouTube is enough of and especially with the highly produced stuff where it's like, okay, these people are still putting in huge amounts of effort. They're not just posting to get that like daily dopamine hit. They're like trying to create something that is worthy of our time. And they're putting a huge amount of effort into it. And the ones that survive and make it are the ones that are interesting, and compelling, and beautiful. And so, yeah, I think that YouTube's a great platform.
Is there someone that you're watching lately that you're like, I am a huge fan of this person and what they're putting out?
Yeah. I I think that Cody Townsend is doing a really good job with the 50 Project. I think he's doing a really excellent job. He created that whole thing for himself. It's freaking awesome.
It's incredible. He has this is like his third career now.
Yeah.
Like
he just made it. He just decided he was going to do it and did it.
Yeah.
Hell yes.
It's crazy.
Hell yes. It's really cool. It's really cool. It's also like in like choosing an objective and telling a story, they're all kind of made up. Like we're aiming towards a peak, or we want to ski this line, or I want to do this number of days, or this amount of vert, or ski all the lines in this book. And it doesn't really matter what you choose. The whole point is that you're like choosing something that's difficult, and then we see the journey and to get to that end point.
Yeah.
And so it's cool. He chose a cool objective.
Yeah.
And one that's fun to follow. Yeah. So I like that.
It is crazy to me too that people have been so invested in following it. Like it is a full on, like people are in the Cody Townsend cult right now.
Oh, big time.
So many people are a member.
Cause it's like, it's easy to quantify. Like there's 50 lines.
Yeah.
Let's watch as he does this and like gets over these hurdles. That's why it's a great objective. You can't, ambiguity is tough. People grapple with this idea. Like if you don't lay out clearly what you're doing or why, people have a hard time. Yeah. Which is a whole other thing now, which is why, like, on the other end of the spectrum, I'm a huge fan of The Bunch because they have managed to create a following with having no clear objective.
I'm so confused. Like,
I love it. I love it. Because they're just like, they just like looked at the sport and then ignored everything. They're like, you know what? We're just going to go do whatever we feel like doing. And people hate because it's like, I mean, they're trying something new, right? They're just ignoring what everybody says is cool, or like how you're supposed to ski, or like what's rad, or all of this. And some of it is silly.
Some of it's silly, but it's so sick. Like,
but it's so awesome because in the end, it's just like a group of people who are out there having fun and experimenting and enjoying themselves, and that comes through because it doesn't always come through in media when people are like truly enjoying themselves.
For sure.
I am a huge fan of The Bunch. Huge fan.
I wasn't expecting that, but it's totally valid, and it makes total sense now that you're saying it. And I'm a huge fan too. Like I love it's just random sometimes. It just feels like it's just happening. You know what I mean? And like they put out a film or like a 20-minute bit, and you're like, where did this come from? Like there was no lead up to it. There was no, we're going to put, like they put it out like a week ahead of time. And they're like, oh yeah, it's coming out. And everybody just loses their shit. And some people have it like that, dude. Like some people just have it to this, whatever it is, they have that where people just give a shit about them no matter what it is.
Totally. But they've also like influenced my behavior, like The Bunch has. Cause I'm like, wow, look at this group of guys messing around on a set of bleachers for what looks like days. Like I'm seeing multiple outfits here. And then, I'm waiting around with my friends and I'm like, guys, we could just stand here on our phones or we could mess around on the snowbank for 25 minutes because, I saw this group of people who really had a blast on a set of bleachers recently, and it's cool. It's their approach to life in letting go of the rules and notions of what is cool. They've allowed themselves to have a greater experience in a greater amount of places.
Yeah. That's funny. That's like two things that you're enjoying right now that are not related at all, seemingly. You know what I mean?
Totally.
But both of them are telling their own story and they're doing it in their own way.
Exactly.
And that's kind of back to the point. It's because on one side of it, it's like, Cody laid out this very clear goal, and all of the like ambiguity of it is in the episode itself, right? Versus The Bunch is just kind of like, it is all just random. It's all whatever happens. It is all this stuff. And obviously like extreme level of skill, talent, all this stuff. Like I'm not discounting any of that, but it just, you watch it and it almost feels like you're watching like a natural event occur, like it's pouring rain out. It's pouring rain out. You can't make that happen. It seems like the exact same thing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's wonderful. It's wonderful. And the fact that they've been able to convey that whole thing is also its own skill form. It's like really cool. Yeah. It's really cool.
Yeah. For sure. All right. We have a voicemail from Madison. Madison Rose.
Hi, this is Madison Rose Ostergren. I'm calling for the Jim Ryan Show, and I want to know about foot stuff and foot health, as well as heat therapy in terms of saunaing and your practice with it, and how you think it helps your health. Heat and cold,
Oh my God.
Okay, so foot stuff and saunaing and cold therapy. So let's start with foot stuff. What is foot stuff?
It's pretty classic that Mads wants to know about foot stuff. Have you ever seen her feet?
I actually think I have.
Yeah, right. So
I think I have on like she just puts it on her story sometimes
all the time.
Fucking gnarly, right?
Yeah, and you're like, there should be some sort of like thing where you're like,
it should be like a warning ad.
A warning ad before you get to see those feet. Yeah, the foot stuff. Anyways, yeah, so that's separate. That's her feet
on blast right now.
I mean, what do people say, that most very pretty girls have really weird feet or something like that?
Yeah, or stomach problems. Yeah, that's like the two things.
So separate from Madison's feet and their weirdness, I've got this whole theory about like people say like, you know, skier feet, you know, they're just destined to be messed up and all this stuff. And I spend a huge amount of time actually working on my feet and strengthening them constantly, which I think people find very strange because, you know, people think that as a skier we should just be squatting all the time and, you know, deadlifting. And I spend a whole portion of my workout in the gym like doing small foot strengthening exercises because I think that it's the primary tool for absorption, like when skiing bumps or landing a cliff or everything. Like if your feet are strong and responsive, then you end up not hurting your knees and specifically back. So I am like always preaching foot strengthening. And as a result, I do a lot of things barefoot, like weird barefoot guy.
In the grocery store.
Maybe not in the grocery store, but like cruising around the neighborhood, walking around. I haven't gone so far as to get the toe shoe, like the little toe shoes, but
oh yeah, I don't know about the toe shoes. I got toe spacers though.
Yeah. Okay, so you're on foot stuff too.
I guess my buddy's like sharing foot space or toe spacers with other people, like the same ones, like not even just putting them on each other's toes and something. Like, you're gonna get fungus. And
dude,
stuff.
you're in it. You're into the foot stuff. You didn't even know it.
I didn't even know it. I didn't even know what foot stuff was, but I guess I'm in it. I just heard it was gonna make your feet smell less bad.
Oh,
that's a thing. Like your toes don't overlap as much if you spread them out. Like your stance is better and your feet smell less bad because they can breathe.
Dude, you're in deep.
I'm in deep. I didn't even know it was in deep. I read one article like by accident on Google probably, but yeah. Okay, so foot stuff.
Foot stuff. Yeah, just general foot strengthening. That like every skier should spend like some amount of time working on.
What does that look like? What do you actually
I do a lot like ballerina moves.
Okay.
Like
no bullshit. Like actually
like bar class.
No shit.
Yeah. I do like I walk around on the balls of my feet or do squats with my heels raised.
Okay.
Just hovering. I will use really light kettlebells and curl them with my toes, like my heel on a bench. Yeah. And then do curls where I like lift my toes up.
Okay.
Yeah. Like single leg work, but then the leg that's not being engaged, the one that's not on the ground.
Yeah.
I will hook a kettlebell with my toes so that my toes are doing work as well as the standing leg.
And people see you doing this.
Yeah. Yeah, total weirdo in the gym.
And they're just like, this is fine. Everything's fine.
Everything's fine.
You haven't ended up on like a TikTok page. Like, have you seen those ones where like people are like pulling the bands back and they're shooting themselves forward?
Yes, definitely. I mean, I probably am.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Good to know. All right. Foot stuff.
That's
very into foot stuff.
Super into foot stuff. I've been considering doing some sort of Instagram post where I like.
This is good content. I think this is good content.
Do a foot stuff workout because I've
like a footbed sponsor.
So that's another thing. I don't wear a footbed because like.
Okay. All right.
You want to see? Look,
yeah.
I got like crazy high arches, and I built those myself.
Oh no shit.
Yeah, dude. I had like flatter feet, and then through foot stuff,
you fixed it.
I built an arch.
I can't. I built an arch. Do you have a before and after?
I don't have a before and after.
Oh, that'd be cool.
Yeah, that'd be cool
to see it for science.
Yeah.
All right. No footbeds. Wow. I wouldn't have even
Yeah,
guess
'cause
that. So even now, like even though you have an arch now, you don't need one.
no footbed, and I think the theory behind it being that if my foot can flex and stay flexed, I'll like have that strength foundation. But if I put a footbed underneath it, I like kind of disable that strength that I've made, like a crutch.
Do you have a boot fitter? Do your boot fitters hate you? Like I.
Do my boot fitters hate me? No, they don't hate me. Yeah, I usually just I don't even.
You don't need one.
I do like a little work sometimes, but most of the time is out of the box.
No shit.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. I mean, that's sick. Like if you can do that, like that's best case scenario, I think, for any boot fitter actually, is like somebody just buys a boot or gets a boot and whatever. It just works.
It just works. Yeah.
So, but I'm sure there's a lot of people that are stressed listening to this right now.
Yeah.
That you're just like,
yeah, stressed or aroused. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. The people that are in the watch, we're going to end up on some weird thread on Reddit or something just because we're talking about this right now. Okay. Foot stuff, that one aside. What sauna, cold therapy, this is a big thing right now. Like everybody's super into it. I'm like, this one I'm in deep on for sure. Like sauna stuff I'm in. Cold therapy is a little harder around here because like the coldest thing available is either like getting a tub and like doing the ice thing, and all these like Instagram ice bath companies they just cost too much money and it's just not a thing. And like Clean River is also not a thing in Springfield, Mass. So not a thing.
Not a thing.
Not a thing. You should drive over the bridge afterwards on your way out and like look down there and there's probably like bodies floating and shit. Like it is not not clean. But sauna, like that is a thing that I'm like fully immersed in right now. It's the best thing I think that I do for my health. It's the most happy I am is when I'm in there. So why do you do it? What is the benefit for you physically, mentally? Like what's the idea?
Totally. I think a lot of people have become aware, like you said recently, of all like the health effects, and for me specifically as a skier, this is something that is separate from I think what's going on with the whole heat therapy craze right now. Is it allows me to, I get mine like really hot. I've got a sauna in my backyard, and I get mine like well over 200 degrees, ton of water in there, like stand up, burn your ears hot.
Yeah.
And it allows me to create a really super stressful situation. Like, you know, people who haven't practiced with me or like gone in there a lot will go like open the door and be like, oh hell no, and close the door and leave. Like it produces the sensation immediately that you could die.
Yeah.
And it allows me to create that situation in it and have it be like a safe environment, because you're not actually going to die. You're just going to get really hot.
Yeah.
But it replicates the feeling that I have, you know, if I'm on like a knife-edged ridge on top of the Grand Teton or something like that, or about to drop in before a line. Yes, that feeling of like self-preservation of your body being like, this is not what I want to do.
Yeah.
Like it is time to go home. We need to get out of this scenario. So but you know, with skiing, what I need to do is I need to recognize that and then not give in. I need to do the opposite of what my body's telling me.
Okay.
To like be able to breathe, compartmentalize that fear and that like trigger response, and then perform. So what the sauna does the same thing. You open the door, my body says, oh, please no, we could die, or we're going to die. And I sit down, breathe, and remain in the room. So it's a way for me to like exercise under extreme stress, like exercise a clear response under a super stressful environment. And I do that, you know, like 3 or 4 times a week. And then, it becomes easier to like be calm and clear-headed in really stressful environments, you know, in the mountains.
How long are you staying in? Like, I mean, what does that look like for you in general?
Like 20 minutes.
Really? Even at that hot?
Yeah. I mean, I've been doing it for like a couple of years now.
So you're comfortable with that?
Yeah.
It's okay. It's interesting because that's one of the things I think that's been getting talked about a little more now, is that it does, like, scientifically, like, actually makes you feel like your body releases whatever hormones it is from itself that simulates that, like, I'm going to die type feeling. You know what I mean? So it's a real thing. Like, it's 100% a real thing. I just never thought about it in terms of skiing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, because, when you're on top of a line and looking down, your body's like,
This is
don't,
bad. Yeah.
you're going to die. I mean, the difference being with skiing, you could actually die.
Right.
Yeah.
So how do you manage that part? Like, okay, all this aside, what does that look like when you're trying to tell yourself, like, this is a good idea, this is a bad idea, like in terms of making a judgment call when you're on top of something?
Yeah, I think it comes in stages, right? You have to decide first. You make the decision whether or not you're going to do it at all,
Yep.
and that you have to weigh that. And there is gut feeling there, and there's realistic, like, can I do this? What is the percentage that I will do this? Do I truly believe that I can ski this whole line and I can exit out the bottom? And if you don't believe that you can actually do it, I won't do it. If there's like it's been a long time since I've been in the huck and pray mentality.
Mm-hmm.
I absolutely don't do that. I have to be able to visualize myself executing the entire line top to bottom before I'll ever drop in. 100%. And then once I make the decision of will I or won't I stop thinking about everything else. It's just I simply do it or I don't. I stop thinking about kind of any other option. I mean, there's like the bail options, but like not should I. It's just like once I decide that I am going to, I stop weighing the pros and cons completely.
Yeah, I think that's a hard one. You're deciding whether something, especially when you're up there, right? Or you're like on your way up there, there's always like this ego aspect of it, right? Where you're like, everybody else is doing it, I should just go do it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, and I think that's a thing that people that are not professional skiers can relate to, because like you're getting scared as shit, and like all your friends are going to do something, and you're like, man, I'm scared.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody else seems scared. I'm scared.
Mm-hmm.
That's a thing that people have to grapple with a little bit, is whether they're like healthy scared or they're just scared because it's a scary thing.
Totally. I remember, so I was filming with Teton Gravity Research and Kate Zelliff, and she said this line to me. She said, you wake up every morning and you know you have to trust your gut. But if you turn around every time you're scared, you'll never be a pro skier. So it's like, it's like, Jesus, it's like, okay, yes, like listening to yourself and trusting your gut, and this feels bad, but then at the same time, you have to like ignore that whole feeling too. It's really tricky because there's the gut feeling and the impulse, and then there's also overcoming it. Really difficult.
Yeah. And you, back to the sauna thing, you feel like that allows you to practice being in a mind state that's like, I can get through this and feel confident making a decision.
It eliminates a lot of the noise, because
Okay.
sometimes, and I mean that almost literally, like sometimes when I'm really scared or when a situation's super tense and I reflect back on it, it's almost like there was this white noise and things were quite literally loud, even though it's not at all. But the feeling is that there's like a roar, and that's just like background fear. So being able to quiet that down so that you can look at something in a more rational way of what is the snowpack? What's my ability? What are my safety resources? These things without the, your adrenal gland just freaking squeezing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It just helps you be in a better state of mind to like analyze a situation.
Yeah. I never thought about it as a way to kind of quiet everything, but you do very much think about it as a meditative practice. Like when you're in there and you're like, I need to get through it, because otherwise you're just like sitting there and you're like hyperventilating the whole time. And you're like, fuck, I'm hot. And then you're like, you make it 5 minutes and you're out.
Totally. You'll never last in that environment.
Right.
If you're like staying in that sympathetic nervous system, you'll just like, you'll burn out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. I've never looked at sauna in that way, but I think it's cool that people are getting into it and people actually give a shit. It's funny. I used to go to a gym that had one and it was always broken, and I was like, okay, this is a bummer all the time. And then this new gym that I'm at, like first started going there a couple years ago, there would never be anybody in there. And now you go in there and there's like 20 dudes stuffed in there like sardines. It's
Totally.
like, it's changed so much because people are realizing that there are health benefits, but there's also like, there's a benefit to just sitting somewhere and being quiet.
I agree.
And just sitting with yourself. even if it sucks and it's fucking hot and all that stuff. Like it's a really nice thing to find a place that you're actually okay doing that, especially if you have one at home. There's nothing better.
Totally. And that's actually one of the rules around phones that I've created. It's just no cell phones in the sauna.
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, that's when it's easy, right? Just because it feels like such a sacred place.
Yeah.
It's like, don't scroll in here.
And it's going to turn off anyway, especially if it's 200 degrees in there. That shit's shutting off in like 10 minutes.
Yeah.
If that, So it's part of the deal. Okay. Last thing I want to ask you, and then I'll let you get out of here. When I saw you last, signing posters, kids' attention, like all over the place. How does that kind of stuff make you feel? Like when kids are coming up to you, like they want a poster signed by you, or they want to meet you at a premiere, or they want that, like people in general, whether it's kids or adults, want that attention from you. Do you enjoy that part of it? Is it draining? Is it a thing that I'm sure it's a combination of both, but what does that feel like in the moment for you?
Totally. I would say that before I ever had the job, it was one of the things that I, fantasized about. Everybody it
was the thing you wanted.
It's the thing I wanted. I wanted to sit there and sign a poster, with my dumb face on it, and write my name. I wanted it. And then when I got it, it didn't feel right.
Okay.
And that's because what we talked about earlier, I felt like I hadn't contributed enough to earn it. And now recently, I feel like I've been in the game long enough that when kids come up to me and they want that poster, that I feel like I have something that I'm now giving back to the sport, and so that I like deserve that poster, or that I can like help that kid and be something for them that will help hopefully enrich their life and their participation in the sport. Mm-hmm. So it has returned to feeling good again. Mm-hmm. Or like, I guess there was the fantasy before that felt good. And so now for the first time, it feels good. Mm. And that's happened in the past couple of years. Yeah. And it's really cool actually when like families come up or kids come up and they want to talk to me, and I try and give them as much attention as I can. Yeah. And that also comes back to like some of the interactions I had with, professional skiers when I was a kid, and the attention they gave me and how that changed my trajectory. Like Keena Pickett visited my high school, and I remember like, holy crap, and him showing us these segments, and it was like so much more of the world than I knew was accessible, and he had gotten there through this avenue, and he had come from Killington, Vermont. It was really cool. So he allowed me to see a path to a different way of living. And so I try and remember that like every time I'm interacting with like the kids and the families, and I try and answer as like any questions they have. Cause I do feel like I've learned a lot in this path, and I know a lot about this sport now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What does that look like when somebody just comes up to you in real life, like in the lodge or just in a grocery store, or like, are you good at that? Because there's some people that are like, when they're on, they're good at it. And there's some people that are dog shit at it as soon as you catch them when they're not ready to be caught.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I have my weird days, everybody does, it's like I'm, it's still in like my pajamas and I'm at Albertsons and it's like 9:30 at night. I might not be as responsive as you're hoping for.
You're not on. Yeah.
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 But I try. Yeah, I try.
Yeah, and I only ask because I think everybody has this anxiety of like seeing a pro skier in their tech, because it's a community, right? Like you're in these areas, you're in Jackson, you're in Stowe, you're in Burlington, you're in Salt Lake, right? And these people like you and other athletes like actually live there and exist there, and it's unlike any other sport where you actually have access to them. You can actually go up and say hi. You can actually go up and shake their hand, versus like you don't see LeBron James like at your local grocery. It's just not a thing.
Totally.
So it's just different.
Yeah, I would say I definitely haven't reached a place where I'm like annoyed by it.
Okay.
Yeah. At all. Yeah. If like someone were to see me and want to like say hello, and that they saw a segment and they liked it, I have definitely not gotten to a place where that is bothersome. I still am like, thank you so much for saying that.
Yeah.
So that's cool, I guess.
Yeah. And obviously like I'm excluding the people that are just like annoying about, because there are people that are just in your face about everything and they're fucking annoying and they want too much. And that's fine. Like I'm kind of excluding those people, but I just can't see a reason why you wouldn't be excited to see some, obviously like wrong place, wrong time, that kind of situation, right. different, excluding that kind of thing. But it doesn't seem, because you do hear these stories of like Dumont's always the example that people use, right? He gets shit on all the time for not giving anybody anything.
Right.
You know, like he felt like he deserved where he was. Fuck everybody. I don't give a shit if they made me get here to this point. Like I made me get, you know? So that attitude is such a bizarre attitude for me. So I always wonder how it feels because you're in these situations, right? You're on a panel, you're at TGR, you're signing stuff for people. You know, you're front facing in real life. You know, you're showing up in real life. And I always just wonder what that experience is like often.
Yeah. I would say it's almost very positive.
Yeah.
Most of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Enjoy it. Okay.
Yeah.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Okay. Jim, thank you very much. Where can people find you on the internet? Where can people watch films? Where can people find everything that you're doing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera?
Totally. I think the two most exciting things out right now are TGR Magic Hour. So that's out on iTunes and other streaming platforms. And that's one of my most proud segments of all time. And then Beautiful Send. So that's 3 words, Beauty Full Send. And that's my inbound stuff that I was talking about. And that's on YouTube.
Okay.
And that's on the vocal page. And then last is social media.
Yeah.
And Jimmy Ryan. So JIMMIRYAN.
Sick.
Yeah. And, you know, I'm not the best at it, but I try and keep people updated on there. Yeah.
I love it. Well, thank you. I appreciate the time very much.
Yeah. I had fun. That's
Awesome.
cool.